And good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on the Sicko Show. I'm your host, the Matty Man. Oh, what a difference a day makes, right? We were on a job yesterday, and once again, we go to the mountains on a regular basis. And at some point in time, after I finished my last job, had a really sharp pain in my foot. Turns out I broke a bone. And so I'm back home. I'm chilling out. My son's out there working right now, and you know, it's it's good. I'm good. Everybody's good. Been asked a few times, and really honestly, it's not a big deal. I got a brace on my foot, got an air cast, the whole 9 yards, holding everything in place. It goes along with certain situations that I have to deal with on a regular basis, and I'm perfectly fine with it. But I appreciate all the sentiment, and I appreciate all the support, especially on Facebook. Some friends have texted me, and so on and so forth, and I appreciate that. Kind of really makes you feel like people give a damn, which is something that is sorely lacking in our society. I don't care what anybody says. Empathy is a dead art. Um, I get it. I'm fine with that. But hey, I was coming back from the mountains yesterday, and I got a message in my inbox on Facebook. And the gentleman asked me, he's like, "Hey, could you review a show for me?" And I'm like, "Sure. What is it? No big deal." And he says, "Well, it's the show from back in 1996, April of 1996, from WWF Superstars." I'm like, sure, why not? I don't get requests on a regular basis. By the way, if you want me to review something, I'm more than happy to do it. I think this is pretty exciting, and it's good stuff. It lets me feedback. Any feedback is good feedback for me. I don't care if it's you need to work on this, you need to work. Absolutely, I'm good with that. I own on a regular basis everything that I do and things that I don't do. But yeah, I got a message in Facebook. I'd like to thank the gentleman for reaching out. I'm not going to mention it on camera because some people like to keep their privacy, and it's just a nice thing. But he's like, "Could you review the Superstar show?" And I said, "Sure." And I want to thank him for that. Much thanks, much thanks, much thanks, much thanks. Because the reality of it is really simple. It reminded me how and why I still watch and enjoy what I watch and enjoy. And coming up on 54 years here shortly, I have a birthday. This is my birthday month. That's as far as anybody's going to get out of me, and I appreciate it. It dawned on me that, beyond it used to be a thing. I don't know if it's a thing now, but one of the things we used to do with our babies and stuff is we'd sit them on our knee and bounce them on our knee. It was kind of fun. Babies laughed, all three of mine, and I remember these times when me and my dad would actually hang out because that just wasn't a thing when we were growing up. Your parents went to work, they earned money, you went to school, you learned something. And at the end of the day, everybody came back home for family dinner and whatever was on the television. The television, at one point in time in our lifetime, was a uniting factor. here somehow. Wow, I have been talking for 13 minutes. Ooh. Ooh, hit the wrong button. My bad. So the reality of things, there's a reason why things are what they are. And I'm not going to pretend that I know more than the powers that be. But let's get into the show because the show was actually a really good one here. I'm going to grab my little notes here that I took and we're going to start off with it. Let's see here. We're talking about WWF Superstars April 27th, 1996. Show opened up with an actual Hall of Famer, someone who should be in the Hall of Fame. Owen Hart kicked off the show facing Rikishi Fatu. There were hip tosses, there were actual wrestling moves. A lot. I mean, now granted, Owen Hart picks up the pin here, but the match itself, and there was some background noise here, and I really needed to go back. I didn't have an awful lot of time to honestly dig deep into finding out and remembering who the two people were that kept showing up at the events. They had sort of a thing going on here with Rikishi Fatu that he was being recruited, followed, what have you. And at some point in time down the road, I think it was a month, 2 months after this show, they actually recruit him. We get a little bit of the Samoan SWAT team, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that, but I think we came out of this with the Samoan SWAT team, so on and so forth. And we're also talking about Hall of Famer Rikishi Fatu, responsible for giving us Jimmy and Jey Uso. And I think if I'm not wrong on this, I could be wrong. I think we got Solo Sikoa out of him as well. So, I mean, but obviously, I mean, he had a little extra weight on him and so on and so forth, which wasn't Vince's type at the time. I mean, basically, I'm not going to say in this particular thing that Fatu was more like enhancement talent, but I think it was more like he was still in the tryout period and he ran through Owen Hart, who absolutely put on a dream match with him. The ending of the match, the big sell part of it for me was that he was still using the sharpshooter, because at this point in time, I think we're building heat between him and Bret Hart. And he was selling. He was selling that not only could he be the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be, he could do it one step better because, I mean, literally, Fatu is trying to hit him with an ace crusher. Owen cuts him off with a suplex and finishes it off with the sharpshooter. And another thing, too, about this that you needed to understand, too, this match went 9 minutes and 12 seconds. There's not an awful lot going on in the WWE right now, and I would challenge anybody to find it going over 6 or 7 minutes. So we got a really high quality match, just slightly under 10 minutes, crowds into it. Looks like, I mean, they're playing to a full house. If I'm not mistaken, let me look up real quick where they were at. Yeah, they were in San Diego, and they had the building packed out for everybody. Following that, we had a short interview time with Michael P.S. Hayes, who at the time was going as Doc Hendricks, where he was talking about good friends, better enemies. He was pushing the In Your House show. Now, this is originally, and I wish they would get back to this format. This was originally how WWE pushed pay-per-views. They had these Saturday shows. They had all of this stuff, which was basically a 1 hour commercial for the show. it was also a hype show. This is part of what I'm looking at right now. It's a hype show for the WWF pay-per-view in your house. Good Friends, Better Enemies, 1996. I may actually, after watching this show, I may actually go back and actually review In Your House. I may actually do that. 1996, In Your House. I may actually go back to do that because this show actually stimulated me enough mentally to get invested in something that, one, this was one of those particular periods in time I didn't buy pay-per-views. But it stimulated me enough mentally just watching this show to want to go back and watch In Your House. As it stands, probably today, I'm going to be watching NXT from last night so I can do a review on the show. But I am going to watch In Your House from 1996, and I'm going to do a live review on that show. Because this is back when WWE, for me, was entertaining. Not to be outdone, we kick back off here. We had a short squash match with Goldust, also should be a Hall of Famer, working against an enhancement talent by the name of Mark Castle. The match went 2 minutes, 23 seconds. And, you know, I mean, Goldust hits him with the hip attack, finishes off the match. 2 minutes, 23 seconds. Legit squash match all the way across the board. Mark Castle had some good moves. Mark Castle was actually making him look good in the ring. And nobody needs to make Dustin Rhodes, sorry, I about called him by his government name. Nobody needs to make Goldust look good. Or Dustin Rhodes, just about called it again. Nobody needs to make Dustin Rhodes look good. Mark Castle happened to do a good job of it, and at this point in time, it's notable that we had a scenario here where Dustin Rhodes himself was going through some mental hardships. Down the road, his wife is his wife, Terry Runnels. And all this is going on, and Goldust still comes out, puts a hell of a show on. Now, granted, it was a short show, 2 minutes, 23 seconds. And after that, the Ultimate Warrior, not Warrior, everybody's calling him Warrior right now. Ultimate Warrior pops up on the Titantron and threatens to make Goldust squeal like a pig. I mean, for real. For real. Once again, storytelling, using the show to promote In Your House. I'm definitely going to watch the show, and I'm definitely going to review it all the way across the board. I'm definitely going to review it. Thank you to the viewer who actually asked me to review this show, because I'm probably going to wind up reviewing that show sometime this week. I'm happy with doing that too. I really appreciate the challenge, the whole 9 yards, because it's leading to bigger and better things for me. After that, we had the Bushwhackers, Hall of Fame Bushwhackers, versus Tim Patterson, Davey Starr. They had now, you have to understand too, the Bushwhackers actually come from New Zealand, but the gimmick is they're selling that they're from Australia, because you got to understand, at this point in time, Americans don't know Australians from New Zealanders. They don't know the difference. They got this guy in a kangaroo costume hopping around as the mascot of the Bushwhackers. Once again, short match. If I remember correctly, there was an injury in this match, and that's why they wrapped it up. It was supposed to go 3 to 5 minutes. Wound up going 1 minute 40 seconds. The battering ram that the Bushwhackers used to use finished off. I couldn't distinguish between the two of them, who was who. But yeah, the Bushwhackers had a move called the Battering Ram. They finished off tag team there, 1 minute 40 seconds. Then they danced around, parade around with the Kangaroo, then parade back up the runway because we didn't have ramps and we didn't have everything else. The current WWE look is the look that we had in 1996. Less was more. And I'm good with that too. So far, and I'm not even going to joke. I'm not even going to joke. I'm not going to keep anything to myself here. There was a point in time when I was starting to mark out. I'm not even kidding. This is the old WWF programming that kept us hooked as they were buying the territories out. But this was also, the Superstars show was also basically an hour-long commercial for In Your House and some of the people that were going to be in there. Not to be outdone by this match, Big Van Vader, and I realize he went by Vader in WWF, but I'm going to call him by the name that he's better known as. Big Van Vader went against John Black, who was an exciting enhancement talent. John Black was a big dude. He could make a lot of people look really good. They used to pair him up a little bit with the shorter wrestlers to get them over. This is how we used to do it. And your big matches, the matches you wanted to see, happened on the pay-per-view. And so here we had Big Van Vader and John Black. Vader just literally came in there, wrecked his entire world. 2 minutes 24 seconds of a show for that one. Another squash, a few squashes back to back to back. Then we had Slam Jam with Doc Hendricks, Michael P.S. Hayes, where he once again covering more matches for In Your House. This was how we did it. And I'm starting to actually get excited for watching In Your House, and that show took place years ago. Because back then, WWF had a formula. And I'm going to pause here for just a minute because I actually used this. Another good reason I watched this today is because it reminded me that WWF had a formula similar to what AEW does right now. This is the formulaic matches that AEW uses, exactly just like this show here. They took this formula and ran the numbers up. Somebody was talking about, and I think they were still conservative, Chris Jericho at one point in time. You got to understand, he comes along 4 years later from this, and he's playing to 5 to 8 million people on a regular basis on Raw. The reason he's playing to 5 to 8 million people on a regular basis is shows like this. Raw actually used to be a lot of wrestling. And I'm going to get into the part of it here later on in this show to break all of that down for you again. Jake the Snake Roberts cutting a promo that took a roughly, I didn't actually break out a timer to time the promos, but it was less than 2 minutes. He got the entirety of his match over with the British Bulldog in less than 2 minutes. I wanted to see the match, and it's, once again, WWE, then WWF, used to be able to sell to the crowd. And they used this formula that we are seeing today. Tonight, when you tune into Dynamite, should you choose to do that, you are going to see the identical formula in that show that I'm talking about right now on this show. That's what I was trying to say. There were moments in WWE that really make me hang on to the product these days. This is why I still watch WWE, because occasionally once in a blue moon, you get shows like this today. And I'm here to tell you, I'm not even joking. These are all live responses. I didn't write anything down. I didn't script anything. These are literal live responses from me to the match, unfiltered, uncensored. Jake the Snake Roberts had an in-ring psychology, still does. And he literally sold this entire match. Now, granted, there was one quick vignette during the show that highlighted Jake and British Bulldog wrestling, and Jake Roberts gets out one of the snakes, puts it on Bulldog. Bulldog loses his shit. And now Jake takes that moment, brings it back in. Now, you've already been introduced to the moment prior to, and it was just a 2-minute clip at most. Now, this is important because this is how wrestling should be sold. I know there's a lot of ways they do it, but during the matches, before the Bushwhacker match, we had a quick review of Jake the Snake Roberts and British Bulldog. In their match, they taped enough of it to where you could see the snake. Revelation is what he was calling it, because this is when Jake was going through his I've been saved by the blood of the Lamb, and he started going on his holy run. So on and so forth. So the snake, Revelation, he puts it on British Bulldog. British Bulldog loses his shit, flips out in the ring, leads us to this short 2-minute promo where Jake basically recaps that part of it and says, I'm going to do it to you again. You're going to meet Revelation. So, once again, in 4 minutes, I'm hooked. I'm hooked. I'm ready to go. You got me. Just shut up and take my money. You got me. Right there. It's that simple, guys. And WWF used to do this better than anybody else did. Used to. That's why they were able to dominate the market. That's why they were able to create this monopoly. Shows like this right here. Yes, WWF was a monopoly. And the reason they were a monopoly, shows like this. Why would you watch anything else? Verne Gagne at this point in time, in this thing, was gone. AWA, no more. World Class Championship Wrestling, on the way out the door. And the NWA/WCW was 4 years away from extinction. Shows like this. Once again, for the people who just jumped in here, we've got 21 viewers. I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank you for joining me. I know you got things you could be doing. You're here watching this, and I really appreciate it. Give me just 1 second here. Thank you for joining us. I can't overemphasize this. I can't emphasize this enough. Shows like this were what made WWF. That's what got them to get the F out. That's what got them to the level you're seeing right now. The only difference is, at this point in time, you have to understand they're playing regularly 5 to 8 million viewers. Even this show right here was pulling 1.2 on a Saturday morning. Morning, not evening, morning. Saturday morning, this show was pulling 1.2. One of the things that I want to qualify here later on, I got one more match we're going to review here, then we're going to talk about the promos and everything else. overall, the main event for the show was Shawn Michaels, Hall of Famer, versus the 1-2-3 Kid, who is now known as X-Pac, also a Hall of Famer, with Ted DiBiase as a management role star with the 1-2-3 Kid. As we find out just a little bit later, there's Stone Cold Steve Austin. Only this, at this point in time, we were calling him, I think, now I do believe they referenced him as Stone Cold Steve Austin, but I don't think Stone Cold was in full swing. It was. I'm wrong. It was. Stone Cold Steve Austin was in full swing. Ted DiBiase managing the 1-2-3 Kid. Gold. Match starts off. Before the match, Ted DiBiase slipped Shawn Michaels a couple of few C notes, don't know how many they are, trying to bribe him. Shawn Michaels, 1-2-3 Kid, also known as X-Pac, for the next 10.5 minutes proceed to put on a clinic. There's a little bit of chain wrestling, there's a little bit of brawling. Overall, the crescendo of the match, Stone Cold Steve Austin coming out and trying to get involved in the match, Shawn Michaels just being Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels being the Heartbreak Kid. X-Pac, Sean Waltman, out there selling like the rent is due yesterday and he was short. Both of them selling back and forth, flying elbows, rope work, chain wrestling, telling a story in the ring. Shawn Michaels comes up with the win with sweet chin music. Stone Cold Steve Austin tries to get involved in the match a little bit later on, tries to get involved there near the end. Shawn Michaels takes the bribe money from Ted DiBiase and throws it out to the fans. Then the fans find out it's not real money, but still, they got an additional souvenir. Not going to go completely into the details of it because of the algorithm. Literally, he had the money in the front of his tights, so you do the math. Basically, he was throwing wadded up pieces of paper at the chicks, and the chicks were eating it up because of the location where the wadded up pieces of paper came from. I mean, literally, this was Hollywood. This was cinema. The cinema that you guys think you're getting right now, we were getting right then. I think a girl like passed out in excitement. No kidding. Like, we got those moments. Like, it was so exhilarating, so exciting that, like, literally girls were passing out in the crowd. That wasn't a work, guys. It was that deep. It was, the psychology of it was that deep. So if you want to criticize, a lot of things, like if you want to go ahead and criticize me and tell me to cope, I was in my 20s when this was a thing. Mid-20s, actually past mid-20s. Working on past mid-20s at that point. When shows like this were regular. This, to me, and honestly, I'm telling you right now, of all the shows that I looked at a couple behind it, I looked at a couple in front of it. I had a couple of Raws around the same time. And if I take the Raws into account, and I take the front show, the show before this one, and the subsequent 2 or 3 shows afterwards, this was a weak show. And it's still a 7. This was regular programming. This was actually a weak show. And it would have still gotten a 7 out of me. After the match, we got the only part of the reason it would have gotten a 7 out of me and not an 8 is because Diesel comes on after that with some pre-taped things, some pre-taped words for Shawn Michaels, and I agree that his presentation probably could have looked a little bit more like he hadn't already been halfway through a bottle of Jack. That kind of flattened it a little bit at the end because I knew that Kevin Nash was capable of giving better promos than he gave at this particular moment. And it really did sound like he was a couple of dips into the sauce cutting this promo. Basically, it was an anti-hero promo that kind of fell flat. If it had been before the show or before the match, it probably would have been a little bit more entertaining to get this match as a reaction to that promo. But otherwise, for real, this show was a solid 7 for me. I'm not even joking. It was very short, sweet, to the point. It was balanced. In this show, in the 1 hour of television that we had here, being realistic, back in the day, we probably had 10 to 15 minutes worth of commercials because it was on network television, and you would have had that. You would have had 10 to 15, not 10 to 15 minutes worth of commercials. We had 6.5 minutes of promos, and the rest of it was wrestling or wrestling related. It was down at the desk. It was down at the commentary. We had Jim Ross, a younger Jim Ross here. We had a Mr. Perfect. So we had our wrestler. We had our Hall of Fame commentary. And of course, in the middle of all this was Vince McMahon pretending to be commentary. At that point in time, we're still not aware that he owns the company. He was able to control the dialogue from the desk. He had 90% of the show format from the desk at the ring in the crowd, which is kind of how Tony does it. Tony just books from behind in the backstage, but he's there with the book and the crowd at the ring with the reactions so he can gauge the reactions he's getting to his work, make adjustments here on the fly. Vince McMahon was literally in the building at the ring. So he's able to make those changes on the fly. And that's what he did on a regular basis. By hook or by crook, he got the words in where he needed to get them in. Shout out to 25 people, by the way, thank you. He was able to control the show, not in gorilla, but right at the ring. And overall, this show was a solid 7 for me. Out of 10, this show was a solid 7. Like I said, it probably would have been higher if Diesel, Kevin Nash, had sounded less inebriated and a little bit more energetic with his anti-hero promo. Overall, this is a show I would recommend for everybody to watch. I know all of you's got Peacock because you're watching the pay-per-view, or I'm sorry, premium live events. You're watching the Police, live and in living color. So you have access to these things. Go back, look at some of these old WWF superstars. Go back and look at some of these WWF Saturday. Don't look at the Saturday night's main events. They sucked. Okay, they really did. They sucked. They got canceled across the world. Some of them were good. Most of them were a waste of time. And they were only utilized when Saturday Night Live wasn't taping. So, I mean, a lot of people were looking for one thing. They got something else. The show just didn't work. Look at some of these superstars. Look at some of these Raws. Look at some of the 95, 96, 97 Raws. In this 1 hour show, we had over 30 minutes of wrestling. Thereabouts. To give you an indicator, Raw's last 3 hour show had 29 minutes and 49 seconds of wrestling. This show had more wrestling than a 3 hour Raw. That's how WWE built their reputation. Now, once again, to the viewer who reached out and said, hey, could you review this show for me? Thank you. I loved everything about this show. I loved the positioning. I loved the closeness of the fans. I love working away from the current WWE. If it goes outside the ring, it's always going to be right there at the commentary desk. And 9 times out of 10, the desk is going to get wrecked, etc., etc. It's as predictable as the sun coming up tomorrow. This was not always predictable. And that's what made it enjoyable. Trust me, try a little bit of something different. I'm not going to think differently of you, and you shouldn't think differently of yourself. See where we came from to where we are now. Compare the products. And if you're still sitting there going, well, I like this stuff better right here, WWE currently is working with the lowest common denominator. The people that are left watching this product are the absolute lowest common denominator of what's left for their viewing audience on a regular basis. Now, I do know that they do quite well over in Europe. So does AEW. This is the type of show that made me appreciate the WWF when WCW wasn't available, when AWA wasn't available, and when WCCW were not available. It was shows like this that kept our wrestling excitement going. Quality show, lots of Hall of Famers, quality look. It looked rough. It looked rugged. It looked the part. I wasn't expecting somebody to pop up out of the crowd and accept an Academy Award. It was just that good. So I want to thank the viewer who reached out to me and said, hey, could you review this show? Thank you. Because of that, I will be reviewing In Your House for that year, 1996, In Your House. I'm going to be reviewing that sometime before the end of this week. I'm also going to be reviewing NXT from last night. Going to be reviewing Dynamite from tonight. I'm going to be doing that tomorrow. It is what it is. We love it. We enjoy it. You don't have to, but leave everybody else alone that is. Otherwise, you know what? We've got 25 viewers. Somebody took off. Not really that concerned. I'm very happy that we have the 25. Thank you for being here. Like, comment, share. As you can see, when you reach out to me, I give back to you. Take this as I'm proving it. Give me stuff to work with, and I'll work with it. Bring your best. I'll take a look at it. We'll go with it. Like I said, viewer, hey, can you review this? I watched the show and said, hey, yeah, I'm going live with this. Because I'm not, and I don't have an agenda here. No, I'm not crapping all over WWE right now. I'm giving you the reasoning for why, when I review a current WWE product, I 9 times out of 10 come out of it with, it was all right. Wasn't great, but it was all right. Shows like this right here are what that does not live up to. When you're doing weekly episodic programming, your weekly episodic programming should go up in quality. And if it goes up in quality, your viewers will follow. This was a phenomenal show. So I really want to thank the viewer who challenged. It wasn't really a challenge. He's like, hey, could you take a look at this? I'm like, sure. I didn't really take it as a challenge. But I want to thank you for bringing this one back to my attention. Because it gives me the opportunity to bring a show like this out to you. And watch it. Get on Peacock. Watch it. Watch this show. It was really good. It was good stuff. It wasn't the trash that I'm dealing with now. Not that and let me qualify that. The whole show to me is not always trash. There are portions in the show to me that probably could probably be, guys, we got social media. Some of this stuff, you see a lot of angles that AEW did that they're doing on social media and not actually on the show. Glad to see WWE caught up. Because that proves that you can do a lot of what we're seeing here on social media. You could see these interviews on social media. All of a sudden, this is a big thing because now Kevin Owens is attacking people after shows, and the attacks are showing up on social media. All of a sudden, this is a thing. AEW's been doing it that way now for the last 6-8 months. That's fact. They've been doing a lot of their promo work on social media. And when they do it, it's to, oh, so now Tony can't afford TV time. No, it's taking the stuff that doesn't belong on television and not putting it on television. And it builds intrigue. Like I said, this show right here, phenomenal show. I would watch something like this on a regular basis. I would review something like this on a regular basis with glee and pride. Look at this good stuff that we got. Oh, it was just a bunch of jobbers. Right! That's exactly what it was. A bunch of WWF superstars and a bunch of enhancement talent making them look like superstars. So when the pay-per-view came up, they hadn't touched each other. They hadn't had a match. This guy's looking badass. This guy's looking badass. We got two badasses. It's the formula for success. Great show. Thank you again, viewer. And by the way, if you send me suggestions like this and you want to be shouted out by username or actual name on the social platform, tell me in advance. The only reason I'm not calling this guy out by name is because he didn't say, hey, you could shout me out, and I'm not going to. I'm not going to out somebody who sent me some constructive work to do. Because we're just too damn tribal. If you want to shout out for these show ideas, I'm happy to do it. This is what I'm talking about. You give me feedback, I bring you stuff. I don't know how it works with everybody else, but if you give me feedback, I bring it back to you. It may take me a few days because I have a shoot job. Bring me the stuff, I'll work on it, and thank you again. I think I probably said that like 10 times, and I could say it 10 more times. Thank you for reminding me why I still hang on to WWE. It's because at one point in time, they used to do this stuff, and I believe what comes around goes around. Eventually, they're going to have to come back to this. They're going to have to come back to this style. And it's actually cheaper in production time, viewership, the whole nine. It's actually cheaper to do it this way. This show was a very low budget show, by the way. Just so you know, the budget for this show was probably stupid low. I'm not kidding. I would say the budget for this show is a low five figures, maximum. The entire budget for this show, low five figures. By today's standards. I'm thinking they pulled this show off in production costs for less than 30. By today's standards. So not only was it a better show than what we get right now, it was actually cheaper to produce. It got more over. It created more tension. It created the matchups that made you want to pay for that pay-per-view. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this show. I find nothing wrong with it. Would I have liked to have seen a couple of spots produced a little bit better? Yeah. But I'm also realistic up here to know that the production they're doing now wasn't available then. Probably for the better. Because this was a hell of a show. In closing, going to be reviewing Dynamite tomorrow. I'm probably going to try to review NXT tonight around 6 o'clock Eastern. I'm probably going to make that a very short show because I've only got a couple of matches that I was even remotely invested in. Then I saw a couple of the clips of the outcomes, so I'm going to go back. I'm going to watch the whole show. And I'm going to get an investment in it to see what I want to work with. Some of this stuff, guys, I'm telling you right now, the way the WWE product is going, some of this stuff I'm just going to be like, Trick Williams won, whatever. Now, I'm not going to be like that with Trick, but I'm just saying some of these matches deserve that kind of review. So, but I'm going to give you a pretty extensive review on it. As it stands right now, my lunch break is for myself. Not over with, but I'm going to actually go enjoy some food and some relaxation, take my medicine. For those of you that are joining in late, broke my foot yesterday. Not a big deal. Don't need a lot of sympathy. Broke some bones in my foot. Goes along with the problems I already have. I'm going to just kind of chill out for the rest of the day. I might, if I don't review NXT tonight, I will review it back to back with Dynamite tomorrow. I'll lump it all together into one review, and I promise you, you're going to be surprised at my review of NXT. I promise you that. I promise you're going to be surprised at my review of NXT. It's not going to be what I normally do. It's not going to be the way I normally review it. We're going to try a few things a little bit differently. We're going to try to build up a little bit here. And you know what, guys? Shout out to 32. And I've had 32 here for a few minutes. And thank you. You guys are awesome. Always make me feel good. Shout out to you. But for the moment, I'm going to go watch the entirety of NXT. I'm going to try to get lined up for Dynamite tonight. And I'm going to give you a solid and fair review of both tomorrow. Just like I gave you a solid and fair review of a viewer request today. And as you can plainly see, there is plenty of WWE product I like. This was one of them. It reminded me of how great WWE was and can be. If they want to save a little money and have a better product, this is it. This is where it's at. Good show. One more time, thank you for the request. And anybody, if you have a request, if you say, hey, won't you take a look at this, tell me what you think. Find this, tell me what you think. As you can plainly see, here I am, reviewing it, enjoying it, Great stuff. But for now, if you're in some of these bad weather areas, we caught our first snow up in Banner Elk today, actually up in Sugar Mountain, which is close to one of the areas I work in. It is October the 16th, not December the 16th. This winter this year is probably going to be tricky. Before I get off here, I would be remiss if I did not say once again, and I know I'm beating a dead horse at this point. I know I say this all the time, but I cannot say this enough. The people in the Western Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina and wherever else, and down in South Carolina and so on and so forth, they need your help. It literally snowed yesterday in some regions. So winter is already here. And it looks like it's going to be a crazy winter. If you can find it in your heart, instead of giving to the Goodwill, instead of giving to your normal places right now, drop your stuff off for pickup for this stuff here. Go see what Dax is doing. Go see what Adam Copeland or Edge, however you want to refer. I don't care. I'm not being tribal. Go to their stuff. Listen. Look what they're looking for. Follow the links. Give as much as you can. I'm not gonna get off of that until everything's back to the way it was before the storm. But these folks are really seriously going to need all the help they can get. So instead of giving to Goodwill this year, I know some of you do it for a tax write-off. Some of you do it because you really feel sincerely and genuinely like this is the thing to do. Not saying the people who do it for a tax write-off don't have the same emotion. Consider, instead of doing that, consider dropping the stuff off at donation centers so people can actually use it now. And I normally don't have a problem with giving to things like Goodwill and so on and so forth, but Goodwill will turn around and charge them for something they could pick up out of a box if you give it that way for free. And they've already lost everything. Do you really need to take their money too? I don't think so. And I'm going to keep this up. I'm getting absolutely nothing back from anybody. Dax is not, it's not like I'm doing this because Dax or Adam/Edge are liking anything I do. I'm doing this because I've been ground zero. And they have a better platform than I do. So I'm sending you to their platform because, guys, we need it. We really do. Can't beat this horse to death at all. This horse is still galloping. It's not even around turn 2. I just saw Swananoa the other day. 19 days afterwards, it still looks like a disaster area. They still have not been able to get started cleaning up. And the families there still do not have relief. They don't have any help. So this holiday season that we're getting ready to get into, between Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, the whole 9 yards, please consider making your donations to things like that so that A, people can get it right now, and B, they don't have to turn around and pay for something that they really need when you could provide it. You're just giving it away anyway. Give it to them. And that's all I got today. Thanks for joining us on Graps TV and The Sicko Show. I'm your host, the Matty Man. This has been your WWF Superstars review for April 1996. Thanks for joining. See you next time. And good afternoon, America, wherever you are. Take care.